the crime issue is absolutely front and center. And this is what should happen. I mean, people should realize that this city, this country is less safe. When I say the city, I mean New York. But in general, this country is less safe now on its streets than it has been in many years. And this is because of Democrat policies. We'll give you a few examples of this because I think this is one thing the Democrats, they thought the media, my belief, Clay, is they figured the media would just not cover it and people wouldn't really be that aware. And that more than even the statistics are startling. I mean, you can sit here, 1,000 shootings in Portland last year, Philadelphia, its highest murder rate ever, Atlanta having 3 years in a row of massive murder increases. Chicago, more people dying per capita in Chicago than, in Middle Eastern war-torn countries right now. I mean, it's crazy what's going on, but the videos which give a visceral feeling of awfulness and terror to people seeing what's happening in their own communities. I mentioned Lee Zeldin just had a shooting outside of his house.
Yep.
Over the weekend, and he's obviously very upset about that, understandably. Here is, and this was a story that Outkick is covering. I note that, one, because Outkick's a great site. Two, not that many, CNN not all over this. ABC News, interesting, Outkick.com covering this, and Fox News, obviously, that there is a guy who on Friday, he is a Guatemalan national in the United States illegally, an illegal immigrant, asked to take a photo with some Vegas dancers. I think there was some, they didn't want to, or I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, I think it was showgirls. If you go to like a Vegas style show, like showgirls were walking out of that casino.
Right. And he said something about being a chef, and they didn't take the photo, and he pulled out a massive knife and stabbed, 8 people, 2 of them fatally, I believe?
Yes.
So a mass stabbing incident, 2 people dead. Now, I understand people could say, well, there are mass shootings that occur, and there are mentally deeply ill and dangerous people that exist in a society of 330 million people. Clay, this individual was not supposed to be in the U.S., period. And the 2 people who are dead and their families should turn and look to the federal government and say, this is on you.
Yes.
This person should not be here, but you allow him to be here because it makes the lib elites like Pelosi and Schumer and Biden feel good about themselves.
This is a direct connection between the lawlessness at our southern border and how it contributes to the lawlessness in this country. And not surprisingly, because Nevada is in the midst of a really tight governor's and Senate race, they're trying to pretend this story didn't happen. But listen to Fox News reporter Matt Finn here explain exactly what happened. And I want you to think about how big of a story this should be, especially given the battleground state and nature of where this took place in Las Vegas, near the Strip, where all of you have been. If you've been to Las Vegas, you've walked right around this area, millions of people there all the time. Listen to this.
The stabbing suspect is 32-year-old Yoni Barrios, a Guatemalan national who does have a criminal record here in California. Police say Barrios stabbed 8 people near the Wynn Hotel on the Las Vegas Strip around lunchtime yesterday. A 47-year-old and a 30-year-old Las Vegas resident died. Barrios is expected to be charged Tuesday with 2 counts of murder and 6 counts of attempted murder with a weapon identified as a 12-inch kitchen knife. The Clark County District Attorney says regardless of Barrios' residency, they might seek the death penalty.
Okay, Buck. Noon outside the Wynn in Las Vegas.
That's the last place I stayed when I was in Las Vegas.
Yeah. And I mean, noon. It's not even after dark, and this guy is on a stabbing rampage, and he should have never been in this country, and he already had a criminal record in California. So he illegally entered. He already had behaved illegally. And all of these innocent people at noon outside of the Wynn just suddenly get attacked by a guy with a 12-inch knife going crazy everywhere. I mean, it is just emblematic of all of the failures on crime that are happening right now all over this country.
And let's keep in mind that there were people who were held, and I don't have the exact number, but we know for at least some of them were held for 18 months in solitary confinement, effectively, in the D.C. prison
They're
system.
still there, Buck, for
some
January
of them are
6th.
still there, but some of them that were held for entirely nonviolent crimes.
Yes.
American citizens in the D.C. gulag, held as though they were threats of another insurrection. The J6 defendants, look at how they treat nonviolent J6 defendants, also known as Americans. Every one of them is an American citizen. And look at this guy who comes in here illegally, commits crimes, doesn't get deported, and now murdered 2 people.
And
tried to murder 8, by the way. I mean, tried to kill 8 people.
What would have probably killed more? I mean, but you're hearing about this. How many of you had heard about this story? Certainly, if you read the New York Times, you ain't seeing it. If you read the Washington Post, if you pay attention to CBS, NBC, MSNBC, if you pay attention to basically anywhere except Fox News and here, you don't even hear about this mass stabbing. Now, if you're in the Las Vegas area and you're listening to us, certainly this is one that created a great deal of news. But it is emblematic. This is what we keep saying, Buck, about crime, and I think it's intertwined completely with the failure to protect the border. There's a story like this, unfortunately, everywhere in America right now, where 100% of people who are innocent are treated in this way and are having to deal with the consequences of our lawless, effective society. And the reason why this is happening is because Democrats decided we were being too mean to criminals. And because cops, they decided, are awful human beings who don't deserve the support of our national institutions. Again, this was a direct result of anyone with a brain seeing from the BLM and the George Floyd movement.
And some of us warned all along that this is what would happen. I'll say some of the best monologues that Tucker Carlson ever did on his show was in June and July of 2020.
Because he was fearless enough to actually call it out when everybody was curled up in the fetal position, even Republicans pretending that this wasn't happening.
Yeah, he was saying it at a point when there were Republicans who were talking about, we need police reform at the federal level. They were bending the knee. There were cops who thought maybe trying to bend the knee, literally bend the knee to this movement on video. It happened in New York, that was a good idea. It was a terrible idea. It was negotiating with psychological terrorists, effectively. And some of us were warning. Tucker was saying, this is lawlessness. This is a rampage. This is disgusting what's going on. And he was absolutely right. And now there can be some consequences for the people that lied about all this. There can be some consequences for those who thought that neighborhoods needed to be burned down because of what one cop did in Minneapolis. Really? Who does that make sense to? It shouldn't make sense to any rational person.
And now, unfortunately, there are thousands of people dead who would otherwise be alive if we had allowed police to do their jobs and if we had allowed people who are violent criminals to stay behind bars. We're reaping what we sowed back in the summer of 2020, and the only way to solve it is with a red wave.
You won't hear much about the open porous border from the divorcee Sam Seder because those are his voters. He and Biden and the rest of the cronies, they want to bring in more people who won't work. They'll sign them up for welfare, and they won't work. That's why California has a much lower labor force participation rate than most states, despite being the youngest state in the U.S. and the highest percentage of residents that didn't finish ninth grade. They want to turn the U.S. into California. So Sam Seder isn't going to talk about that because those are his voters. And let's, now that is out of the way, let us look again at some of the Democrat Party's finest work, cities they have owned for decades, and see what happens when Sam Seder voters get their way. Our first contestant is Jackson, Mississippi. Jackson homicide rate 2018 to 2020, 63.252 per 100,000. Jackson homicide rate 2015 to 2017, 33.74. Jackson Public School District data, school years 2014 to 18. 46.1% of families with children in public schools are on food stamps, SNAP, and from now on I'll just say the percentage in food stamps, so I don't have to repeat that, but 46.1% of the families with children in public schools are on food stamps. 69% of families with children enrolled in public schools are single parent, and 17% not in the labor force. School years 2015 to 19, this is all from the NCES, 44.7% food stamps / SNAP, 60% of families with children enrolled in public schools are single parent, and 14.9% are not in the labor force. For 2019 to 2020, class of 2019, the 4-year graduation rate is 75.1%, up from 67.7% in 2015-16. In addition, I'll have another article down there I wrote, I'll link to it, in response to the vacuous Latifah Faisal, Story County, Iowa supervisor, because she's for open borders, and she blocked me immediately when I challenged her on it, the little hobbit. And I went through a lot of data on ELLs, English language learners, and how bad they do in a lot of big school districts. And that's what Biden, he wants to bring in more people that they're already years behind. They're not going to finish high school here, many of them, and they're going to go on welfare, just like California. ELLs in Jackson have a graduation rate of 55.6%. Not bad. The last 4 school years, more than 19% of Jackson public school students have dropped out. We need school choice and vouchers. On all metrics, Jackson, which is a Democrat enclave, does much worse than Mississippi en masse, and I would wager a lack of fathers and positive male role models play a massive role in that. Our next contestant is St. Louis City, Missouri. Their homicide rate is routinely 10 times the national average. Enough said. St. Louis City School District data for school years 2014 to 18, 48.9% food stamps / SNAP. 69% of families with children enrolled in public schools are single parent, and 19.5% not in the labor force. So for you Democrats listening, that's almost 1 in 5 of the parents of children in public schools in St. Louis not in the labor force. So they're not counted on the unemployment rate, Pete Buttigieg. 2015 to 2019 school year data, 46.3% food stamps. 61% of families with children enrolled in public schools are single parent, 18.7% not in the labor force. Now for some more bad news. From 2005 to 2010, more than 44% of students in St. Louis City School District did not graduate on time. More than 78% of the enrolled students received free or reduced lunch. Poor people in St. Louis have been voting Democrat for 60 years. They're still poor. More than 78% of the enrolled students receive free or reduced lunch. Poverty has long been a problem in St. Louis despite massive influxes of taxpayer dollars. They also have a student discipline issue, and it's much higher than the state rate. From 2006 to 2009, and this is 2009 data, more than 22% of students were below basic in communication arts. By 2019, the graduation rate, this is a rolling 3-year average, was still only 73.9%. And more than a fifth of all students did not graduate in 5 years. Overall academic achievement remains well below the state average. These are your Democrat voters, Stan. And for subgroups, Black, Hispanic, low income, and ELLs, it is a bit closer to the state average, but still lagging behind. We need school choice so poor Black children can escape St. Louis's bad government schools. Let's move on to Newark, New Jersey. Cory Booger's former hometown, mayor. Newark homicide rate 2018 to 2020, 20.366. Newark homicide rate 2015 to 17, 33.46. They're routinely way above the national average. Their school district data 2014 to 2018, 39.2% are on food stamps, 62% of families are single parent, and 18% of parents of children in public school are not in the labor force. School years 2015 to 19. 37.1% are on food stamps. 54% of families with children enrolled in public schools are single parent. And 17.9% of the parents of children in public school are not in the labor force. Now for even worse news. Newark schools aren't faring well. Recently, the 4-year graduation rate was only 76.2%. And I link and screenshot all this stuff too. So just in case it goes bye-bye, and I archive it. Just in case it goes bye-bye and somebody says, you're lying. No. 4-year graduation rate, 76.2%. For you Democrats listening, that's almost a quarter of kids that don't graduate on time. 28% of students were missing 10% or more of school days, and 76% of their students were getting free lunch, 6.8% are getting reduced lunch. Only 34.8% met or exceeded expectations in English language arts, and only 24.1% in math. These are your Democrat voters, Stan. You're cultivating idiots. And the Democrats want it this way. That's why they oppose school choice. We've created generations and generations of idiots in Newark, New Jersey, and they want that to continue because they need to keep winning there. In 2015 and 2016, 74.2% were getting free lunch and 4.4% were getting reduced lunch. English, language arts, literacy was only 27% for grades 9 through 11. In 2017-2018, over one-third of students were chronically absent. In the 2018-2019 school year, 28% of their students were chronically absent, and in 2020-2021, it was 18%. How about Richmond, Virginia, another city laden with crime, and overwhelmingly votes Democrat? Richmond homicide rate, 2015 to 2017, 25.35. In 2018 to 2020, it was 26.918. Richmond City Public Schools data for school years 2014 to 2018, 46.1% are on food stamps, 70% of families are single parent, and 19.3% of the parents of children in public school are not in the labor force. Same data 2015 to 2019, 42.1% are on food stamps, 62% of families are single parent, and 18.4% of the parents of children in public school are not in the labor force. You'll notice as we got further into the Trump era, some of those numbers improved. Although they are skewing the single parent one because now they got cohabitating couple. But a lot of them, the percentage on food stamps and the parents not in the labor force went down because Trump's economy was much better than Obama's. And now for some more bad news. Richmond School District is a wreck, and it is probably because the parents of these children are just large children themselves. Get a load of this. Richmond Public Schools graduation rate is 75.39%, down 1.5% from 2016 to 2017, with a dropout rate of 19.53%, up 2.91% from the previous school year. The Virginia on-time graduation rate only shows the percentage of students who earned a Board of Education approved diploma within 4 years of entering high school for the first time. Students who graduate in more than 4 years are not included in this rate. Richmond's graduation rate was as low as 71% in 2010, and the dropout rate was 14.1%. Tell me, is it much better or not? Now let us add Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Homicide rate 2015 to 2017, 22.67, and in 2018 to 2020 it was 21.996. Milwaukee school data 2014 to 2018, 46.2% of families receive food stamps, 63% of families are single parent, and 20% of parents of children in Milwaukee schools are not in the labor force. 2015-2019 data, 44.3% of families receive food stamps, 52% of families are single parent, and 19.9% of the parents of children in Milwaukee public schools are not in the labor force. Milwaukee School District is a train wreck from 2015-2016 school year to 2018-2019. Asians graduated, this is a 4-year rate, at a rate of 82.375%. Whites, 73.525%. Blacks, 58.425%. Hispanic/Latino, 63.225%. ELLs, English language learners, 59.125%. And overall, 62.35%. And note, limited English proficient was changed to English learners. How is it that ELLs graduated at a higher rate in Milwaukee than blacks? 40% of ELLs do not graduate on time. This is why Democrats do not want immigration via merit. They want a tidal wave of migrants coming over the border so they can stuff them into crummy school districts and sign them up for welfare when a massive chunk of them fail to finish school. Stan Seder knows a little bit about merit. Your talk show failed because you suck. And they just don't let anybody do a talk show. You tried it and it failed and you suck. And that's why you just spend all your time on Twitter and YouTube now, because you're a loser. The 6-year graduation rate overall in Milwaukee for the aforementioned years was only 70.7%. 30% of students in Milwaukee don't finish in school in 6 years. That's not impressive overall, but I have to give them credit for not quitting and seeing it through. Again, why are Asians outperforming whites, Hispanics, and blacks in Milwaukee? Same story, different city. The 3-year dropout rate for those years was a collective 5.325%, and the absenteeism rate, 1-year district rate, was 22.3%. That means over 1 in 5 Milwaukee students are missing more than 3 days every 4 weeks of school. Note, Milwaukee's chronic absenteeism rate is different from the normal more than 90% attendance. They say this, quote, absenteeism rate is the percentage of students who are chronically absent and have attendance rates below 84%. So almost a quarter of the kids are missing 16% of school or more. Sad. It starts at home. If you want to know one massive reason Asians are doing so much better than other ethnic groups in Milwaukee, take a gander at their attendance rates. Hispanics are chronically absent more than 2 times as much, and blacks about 4 times as much as Asians. That's a big indicator right there, and I would hazard a guess that most of those Asian students having a father and mother telling them to get their homework done as soon as they get done taking out the trash and cleaning the garage. I did not include Pontiac, Michigan in my previous crime essays last time, as I cannot include everyone. But I did have it in my essay on whether COVID-19 increased homicide rates. Pontiac routinely has homicide rates about 3 times the national average. How about their schools? School year 2015 to 19, 44.1% of families are on food stamps. 53% of families are single parent, and 19.5% of the parents of children in those schools are not in the labor force. In Pontiac, the 4-year graduation rate, according to Michigan school data, gives us a graduation rate of 59.33% in 2019-2020 and 56.39% in 2020-2021. Not good. Over 80% of students qualify for free and reduced lunch. Almost 80% are classified as economically disadvantaged. There's been a culture of fatherlessness in Pontiac for some time. The saga continues. Students proficient in math and English, that's grades 3 through 8. It was only 8% in 2016-2017 and 6.9% in 2017-2018. No wonder Pontiac votes overwhelmingly Democrat. It is also a dropout factory. The dropout rate was 15.3% in 2019-2020 and 17.62% in 2020-2021. School choice, my friends. Kansas City, Missouri. I didn't catalog them in earlier essays, but I did in my most recent one. Their homicide rate in 2018 to 2020 was 30.829. It's a Democrat city. Their school district data, 36.1% of families are on food stamps, 48% of families are single parent, and 18.1% not in the labor force. According to the Missouri Department of Education, the 5-year graduation rate, this is a rolling 3-year average for KC public schools, government schools, was a paltry 76.8% in 2019, and more than 1/5 of all students suffered from chronic absenteeism. On all those metrics, they are well below Missouri state averages. They were also below state averages in the all-important English language arts achievement for the so-called subgroups, as well as math and science. It has been this way for a while. As of July 2020, the district pegged its graduation rate, I presume 4-year, at 65.3%, which is not good. In the 2019-2020 school year, the graduation rate was 74.9%. All students qualify for free lunch because who wants to be indoctrinated with SJW propaganda on an empty stomach? This district also has a much larger percentage of its student body being classified as ELLs. So send a bunch of them there and they'll certainly fail. Another large district, an area dominated by Democrats that is performing poorly. School choice, vouchers. Write your state legislators and governor, tell them to establish or expand a school voucher / school choice initiative, or an STC, scholarship tax credit program, and allow parents to get their kids out of bad schools and or schools that are nothing but brainwashing clinics. How about Syracuse, New York? Homicide rate 2018 to 2020, 17.086%. Syracuse school data, 51.3% of families are on food stamps, 59% of families are single parent, and 23.4% not in the labor force. Syracuse's vaunted public schools are so bad they are celebrating a 4-year graduation rate of 70.7%. This is a record high in the Syracuse City School District and a 6% increase from the previous year. The 70.7% is the highest graduation rate achieved since New York State switched to cohort-based accountability for the 2002-2003 reporting year. Note, the only group of all those with a graduation rate of 80% or better was Asians. Sam Seder, would you hire a plumber that screwed up 30% of his jobs? Or would you hire an electrician that screwed up 30% of his jobs? So why do you keep defending these teachers' unions who are just churning out idiots? And it's done on purpose. And a lot of those teachers, I'd say most of the teachers in the Syracuse School District suck. This is so bad, even the schmucks in Des Moines Independent School District are saying, you guys have issues. Prior to that, in a good year, Syracuse had 1/3 of their students not graduating on time. Soft bigotry of low expectations? ELLs had a paltry graduation rate of 58.1%. The previous year, 60% of them did not graduate. And here's some really bad data. In 2008, the ELL population comprised approximately 8% of the total Syracuse student population. In 2015-2016, the ELL student population was 3,294 and grew nearly 100% since 2008, comprising over 16% of the total student population, making it one of the most rapidly growing student populations in Syracuse. The gap between ELL students and their non-ELL peers in academic performance continues. Surprise. The graduation rate disparity between ELL students, 33.5%, and their non-ELL peers, 57.6%, continues. Note, it's bad when a 57.6% graduation rate looks good. There were many years where more than 60% of ELLs did not graduate, and more than 40% of the entire non-ELL senior class did not graduate. This is what happens when you shun school choice, enable the state, and have an immigration system that is anti-merit. Our lavish welfare state has had a lot of ill side effects. In Syracuse, it is not uncommon for about 1/3 of the class to not graduate in 5 years. School choice, my friends, school choice. But Sam Seder doesn't want that because he may lose his voters. In 2017-2018, the chronic absenteeism rate was 34.8% for all students. It starts at home. ELLs had the second lowest rate, yet many of them still fail to graduate. Surprise? Asians had the best attendance. American Indian / Alaska Native and Hispanic Latino had rates approaching 50%. It all starts at home, folks. 50%. Can you believe that? That's mind-boggling. In high school, the chronic absenteeism rate goes up to 37%. If you don't show up to work, you do not expect to get paid. Unless you're Joe Biden and you'll promise people over a year's worth of unemployment benefits. One last city, Cincinnati, Ohio. Homicide rate 2018 to 2020, 24.894. 37.4%. This is the school district data. 37.4% of families are on food stamps. 60% of families are single parent, and 16.5% are not in the labor force. In Ohio, if any student misses 2 days of school a month, which is more stringent than most, who require 90+% attendance to avoid chronic absenteeism. In Ohio, if you miss 2 days of school a month, they are considered chronically absent. Cincinnati public schools are on the list of schools required to have an absence intervention team. The 4-year graduation rate, averaging school years 2014-2015 to 2017-2018, was 74.575%. 1 in 4 do not graduate on time. In 2008-09, it was 80.4%. In 2009 to 2010, it was 81.9%. In 2010 to 11, it cratered, falling to 63.9%. The 2011-12 report pegs the 4-year graduation rate at 66%, and only 68% graduated in 5 years. It seems that their attendance is above the state-mandated threshold for school years 2008-09 through 2011-2012 at least, but it seems to still be a problem among a minority of students. The absences are obviously not spread out amongst the general student population. The state report cards for Cincinnati, this is school years 2018-19 and 2017-2018, do not bring good tidings. The 5-year graduation rate remains below 80%. Chronic absenteeism was 19.9% in 2019-2020. The 5-year graduation rate did crest the 83% mark. Chronic absenteeism was 17% in 2014-2015, 30.7% in 2015-2016, and 13% in 2016-2017. And guess what? Asians, despite being a minority, despite being shoved into internment camps during World War II, about 120,000 of them, racism, evil whitey, FDR, and all that stuff nobody will ever get over, they are leading the way in graduation rates, attendance rates, and academic achievement. Sam Seder, find me a school where blacks and Hispanics are outperforming Asians, where Asians are not like 1%. Find me any school district where Asians are like, 4% of the student population or more. And so are Hispanics and blacks. And find me one where the Asians are being outperformed by the blacks and Hispanics. You won't find one. There's that ever-present barrier between Asians and whites versus Hispanics and blacks. It's not a battle per se, but then again it is, because if you do not show up, you will not achieve, and we have seen this movie before. Again, school choice, allowing the money to follow the student, giving them a chance to escape these bad government schools, and many of these Democrat enclaves have a lot of them. I should also mention again that it all starts at home, and there are a lot of dysfunctional families in Cincinnati whose children just go to school to keep them from wandering the streets all day. Democrats don't want school choice, but because this is a roadblock to their LGBT, SJW indoctrination nonsense, and they need that to keep the permanent underclass voting for them. There you have it, kids. Another list of Democrat-run enclaves with poor schools, high homicide rates, and a lot of fatherless kids. Elections have consequences, and next month, let's throw the bums out. So there you go. That's another whole list of Democrat-run cities. This is what happens when divorcees like Sam Seder get their way. Have a nice day. And again, next month, throw the bums out.